and welcome to Wordpath, the show about Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are teaching and preserving them. We have two very special guests tonight to talk about the Cherokee language. They are Ruth Bradley Holmes and Betty Sharp Smith, authors of Beginning Cherokee, which was published by OU Press and is a very popular text for Cherokee language study. It's been through, I think, 18 printings now. In fact, this is my copy, and I understand the current one is yellow and has a picture of Sequoia and his daughter on the cover, right? And so I'd just like to welcome Ruth, who is on your right in the pink, and Betty, who is on your left, who has spoken Cherokee all her life. Welcome to the Wordpath program.
Thank you.
We always start out by teaching our viewers how to greet someone in the language that we're talking about. Betty, could you instruct us in how to say hello to someone in Cherokee?
Yes, I can. Hello, Osio. How are you? Tohiju.
Now, if someone says, oh, see yo to you, do you say the same thing back, or how do you respond?
Yes, just like you do in English. When someone
Right.
says hello to you, you say hello back.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now, by way of learning a little bit about each of you and your work on the book, I'd like to start by asking Betty to tell a little bit about her own background, or you were going to talk to us in Cherokee about your childhood. Could you do that?
Yes, I can. Aya. Chike yu cha chike sa. Sonela de iskohits. Jos ko savu udetia satisa aquatena. Inake ale salui kesan o jehan akiti akitota tikilagi nikata o jinela sawu kanusula atanela ata ama squeezed in newsstand. Jalaki squeezed the OG one is asena tuna del was the ogalena a unega oga del qua nikata uketa lia o tinela asena una edota utanila una no edu dat juena san ogena san una tokatasa nikata tokatel kwa uyo nokata nikat asena eji stai jula stane ge una no nikata tokatel kwa and juni last again ela de o je don nikata asena uyo in okatane osta o je don ejin stai jula stane ge asena to kenasa osta nokatana oji steliska eji Nicola otsuhaska oje toha iche ogi johan ogalstait skina eduji uwenasa tokatasa nikata una ojinela nona tokatas Okatanasa.
Cherokee is a beautiful language. I just enjoyed listening to that, but I'm afraid I didn't understand very many words at all. Could you explain to us in English what you were just telling us about?
I said, when I was a little girl, we lived in the country, and we talked Cherokee most of the time because my mother, she didn't learn to speak English, but a few words, and but we never forgot Cherokee. We always talked Cherokee, even though we were told at school not to speak Cherokee. But when we got home, well, we always had to talk Cherokee to Mother. And we lived, like I said, we lived in the country, and we were born in this log cabin, one room log cabin where we lived. And then we moved to my grandfather's house, which was a bigger house. And my father died in 1940. And after that, we were pretty much alone, but then my grandfather died soon after my father died. And so it was left up to my uncle, and we lived with him, and he took care of us. And so we grew up being thankful, you know, so what we had and everything. So it's just a life that I will never forget, you know, how we lived. But I never dreamed that being Cherokee was that much different, you know, because I didn't think of it that way. And but it's I'm glad that I can still speak Cherokee like I do, and I do study. I try to read up on.
We all are glad that you're still speaking your Cherokee language, and so that's wonderful. And it's interesting to hear a little bit about yourself. Now, how did you and Ruth get together and wind up writing this book?
Well, that was a kind of funny thing. We went to the same class, and the teacher they had, he was going to leave, and so they wanted someone to take his place. And it so happened that I was there the night they were deciding, you know, what to do. So I took the class over, and I taught about 7 years, wasn't it?
At least, no, more than that.
Yeah. So it was a great experience of, you know, meeting people and teaching the language. And
Ruth, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the process of actually writing the book. When you got to that stage that you decided to write the book together, what was it like? Were there must have been a number of decisions you had to make as to which way to design the book.
It was really wonderful and rewarding, hard work, but it was a lot of fun. Betty had noticed that I was always asking leading questions in class, and so during the summer she said that the Indian Women's Club had asked her to be the Cherokee teacher the following year as well, and would I help her with lesson plans. And so we started helping with lesson plans. We got four lessons together, and then it struck us that we were working so hard on the lesson plans, why didn't we have the book published? So I wrote with the OU Press to Mary Stith, and she came and visited in Tulsa. We went down to Tulsa and met with her, and she said that if we got the book together, that she would be happy to publish it. So the first thing that we had to decide was probably whether we were going to use the syllabary or not, but that was no decision. We were sure we wanted to use the syllabary.
For viewers that might not know the situation, you can write Cherokee in at least two ways that people commonly use. One is called the syllabary. Can you tell a
Yes.
little bit about that?
The syllabary was invented by Sequoyah, but the present-day syllabary was invented by Sequoyah in collaboration with Dr. Worcester. Sequoyah invented his original syllabary, which is in an appendix in our book, and it had a lot of curly letters in it that were terribly hard to put onto a font. So Dr. Worcester had been printing Indian language books, and he had many fonts from many different alphabets in English and also in Greek, and he and Sequoyah got together. And that's the present-day syllabary. Now, I think that shows how tremendously lofty-minded Sequoyah was. As soon as he realized that his curly letters were going to hold people back, he immediately got to work and collaborated on the present-day syllabary. And as soon as this syllabary was broadcast, everybody started to read in it because it is very suitable for the Cherokee language. It would be terrible for English because it's a syllabary. Our English language is not like, for instance, Italian, which is largely syllables. Cherokee is largely syllables, so
It
his
has to do
syllabary
with
was
the
good.
consonant and vowel structure.
Yes.
Right? Cherokee has a lot of just a consonant followed by a vowel, syllables of that shape. So
Precisely.
with a limited number, what is it, 80 some?
I think it's 86.
Syllabary characters,
86.
86. You can describe every syllable in the language, and that would not be possible at all in English. We have a much greater variety of syllables. Yeah.
No, true.
Now, the other major way of writing, which is, do you call it phonetic? When you write in the Roman
transliteration.
letters? Transliteration. You also use that in the book.
We also use that because there are some gaps in Sequoyah's syllabary. Do and, for instance, and do is sometimes pronounced toe and tu, and he wasn't aware of that because as a Cherokee he was used to changing over, and he didn't just notice that that it could have been different. And go and co, for instance, there isn't any difference in the syllabary. But, and of course it's always a lot easier when you see the pronunciation in your native English, or
At least letters
that helps you to learn the syllabary letters.
I see. What about other types of decisions, like is the book entirely based on the speech of Betty's speech,
Yes,
or do you
indeed.
take into account different dialects at all?
Yes, and I personally think that just by chance, by serendipity, we arrived at a very good combination because in that way I had learned a lot of languages as an outsider, so I was familiar with the structure of grammars, and she hadn't. And I knew no Cherokee, of course, whatsoever, so we never got into any arguments. I can hardly believe that, but
So you each brought your different talents to the table.
That's right. All I wanted to do was whatever she said was so, and all she wanted to do was to express it as she knew best to express it. So
So that was another very good collaboration, I would say, that you're working together in that way.
That's right.
yes, it worked out nicely.
Well, there may be other people watching who would like to come up with something similar for their own language, perhaps some native speakers or some more analytical people who are working in combination with native speakers, as in your team. Can you give them any advice, or are there any pitfalls that you'd like to help them avoid, or anything like that that might be helpful?
Well, some native tribes have excellent, like for instance, Choctaw has an excellent book by Dale Nicholas and two ladies, Betty
seen that.
Jacob and Betty Spencer, I believe. But I would say that the weaknesses in this movement toward trying to get your Native American language back are twofold. One, you need to have a native speaker who knows the language very thoroughly, and just by chance, you know, Betty happens to know the language completely. And secondly, I think that so many times linguists are the only people that are attempting to do these, and unfortunately I don't believe that linguists are the ideal people for a pedagogical grammar, because they are not used to trying to help people to speak it. They're used to describing the language, but who wants to know whether it's aspirated or what? What you want to know is whether yes, you want to be able to say something that you'd like to say, and that's what we try to put in the book.
That's great. Well, Betty, or either of you, what kind of feedback have you gotten? If you've been through all these 18 printings, I think now. So through the years, what has been the response to this book?
Oh, the response has been just great. It really has. People just always have good things to say, and a lot of them will say, "Oh, we're so proud, you know, to have a book like that."
That's great.
So it makes us happy.
It does. We get lots of telephone calls. Betty gets, I pass them on to Betty if they say, "I want to name my motorcycle Thunderer."
Yes,
or something like that. So then I pass them on to Betty immediately. And sometimes they've asked her how to conduct a wedding in Cherokee or a proper funeral in Cherokee. And as Betty says, of course, the only people that telephone us are people with complimentary remarks. People
Hopefully.
that don't like the book don't call.
No, that's right.
No, I'm sure there's no one like that. Now, you mentioned we mentioned that you have both syllabary and transliteration in the book. What about this first came out in '76, I think. What about the problems of getting this syllabary in publishable form? Were there problems with that? Was there a typeset available, or how did you approach it?
No, I'd had to submit it. Mary Stith said, we don't have any editors that can tell us whether any of this Cherokee stuff is wrong. So you had to submit it photo ready. So I had to type it and retype it, and then Betty and I would go over and see what we could telescope onto the page. And as to the Cherokee letters, at that time they didn't have any fonts, so Will Ryder, who was an aide to Chief Keeler, was a draftsman, and he presented us with the sheets that had the Cherokee letters on them in little, in the draftsman types of sheets, and I would make little blue ruled lines and stick them in, each with an X-Acto pen.
So they were all done by hand?
They were all done by hand.
That is just amazing. Of course, nowadays you can get computer fonts for Cherokee, right? I think you were telling us before that there are two main ones available.
Well, I don't know about the...
one was through Cherokee Nation, right?
Yes. And
so if someone has a computer and would like to, and is learning the syllabary and would like to have that font, would they get in touch with Cherokee Nation in Tahlequah?
Yes, I'm sure that's where they should call and get some information that they...
Okay. And I understand there's another one that you were telling me about, Ruth?
Yes, there's one that was originated at Yale University, and it's being distributed around, and Laura Anderson here at OU has access to it.
Good.
But I'm not certain how you go about buying it.
Okay, so perhaps they could find out through the anthropology department at OU.
Exactly.
All right. Now, we obviously, I think we only have about 5 minutes left. It's amazing how the time flies when we get into these shows. We can't summarize the grammar of Cherokee in a few minutes, but you did bring a chart, Ruth, that maybe you could just explain a little bit to give people some idea of...
get up and go over
well, maybe we could just show it on the screen, and you could sort of summarize. He's telling her that we're ready to go.
That chart is meant to show how terribly complicated and yet beautifully organized the Cherokee language is. It's a chart of the Cherokee verb, which is divided very rigidly into 4 sections, which have to be consecutive. Section 1 is the prefixes, Section 2 is the pronouns, Section 3 is the verb base itself, telling you what's happening, and the 4th section is the suffixes. Now, every Cherokee verb has to contain 3 of those sections. They have to contain a pronoun, a verb base, and a tense marker or suffix. However, there are such verbs as the one down there, which contains sections from every single one of those. Usually verbs do not contain all the sections, but when they do, they say something rather silly like, I go about bumping my head at a distant place. But yet, every single tiny little marker there has a specific meaning. And down below, it illustrates the fact that Cherokee is organized something like the decimal system. You know how when you have 10,000, some of the zeros, if you change a 0 to a 1, it changes the total. And in the same way, in Cherokee, you can put a sk in different parts of the verb, and it will mean something different in every part of the verb. For instance, if you put the sk in the pronoun section, it means I, you. If you put the sk in the verb base section, it is an incorporated noun meaning head, or sk. If you put it in the suffix section, and of course every Cherokee internalizes these arrangements. Every Cherokee doesn't maybe consciously know it, but every Cherokee internalizes this chart and utilizes every single tiny infix according to it. And sk in the suffix section, the non-final suffixes, is an aspect marker. Sk in the final suffix section is an interrogative. So that's how you build up such a lot of complicated verbs out of the very tiny phonetic inventory that Cherokee has. As you know, it doesn't have an F, V, TH, P, what else doesn't it have? But at any rate, it lacks many consonants that English has, but because of this rigid use of its phonemes, it can make very many different words. It's a mix and match language.
It gets the job done, doesn't it? And of course, it sounds almost forbiddingly complex to us as non-speakers, those of us who are non-speakers, Betty, but you grew up speaking it and spoke it all your life, so it's very natural to you, isn't it?
Well, yes.
We're running a little low on time. I had 2 questions left. One, and we'll just have to give this kind of short shrift, but one has to do with the connection between language and culture. I know there are always important cultural links with all of the Native American languages of Oklahoma, things that sort of depend on the language for their own life. Can you say just a brief word about that? Are there stories or songs that are very important in the Cherokee language?
Oh yes, they are. I think songs are very important, and I would just like to say to the different tribes that are, trying to teach the language to their tribes and whoever wants to learn an Indian language, I would just like to say that let's just keep on trying. That's all we can do, to really stay with it that way.
Absolutely. Keep on keeping on.
That's right.
Well, we're nearing the end here now. Let me just ask you a final question. What do you honestly think is the future of the Cherokee language? We know that fewer and fewer children through the years have been learning it, and that's so important in the future of a language. But what is your estimation, Betty? Will the Cherokee language survive in Oklahoma, and how do you picture it some years down the road?
Well, that is a big question, but I will say that if, like me, if I just keep on, trying to teach it or write more about it, and the rest of the Cherokee teachers that are out there and that are teaching it, and if they just keep on, I think the Cherokee language will survive in its way.
We certainly hope so. Now I need to ask you to teach me one more thing in Cherokee. Betty, how would I say thank you?
Wado.
Wado. Both Betty and Ruth, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been very enlightening, and we're very honored to have had you. And thank you very much for joining us on the Wordpath show tonight. See you next time on Wordpath.
Yo, hey, na, hey, yo, hey, ana magwana kita wa pene malaone kita na hene yo hene na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene malaone kita na hene yo hene na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene malaone kita na hene yo hene na hene yo hene ana magwana kita wa pene malaone kita na hene yo hene na hene yo hene ana magwana kita